All right, welcome back to this new lecture. Right now, I want to show you different view methods we have, which we use in the production. So first, I'm going to create a cube again. So Shift A, Mesh, and then Cube. And now, right now, we're in the solid view. This thing is called solid view. And how do I know that? Because we have this thing selected over here. This is called viewport shading, which is a solid mode, as you can see on the right side. Now, we have different modes. We have solid mode, we have wireframe mode, we have material, and we have the rendered mode. So most of the time, like 80 or 90% of the time, we're going to spend with the solid view, because when you're animating, you don't really need to see all the textures, all the wireframes and all that stuff. But sometimes you want to move to the wireframe mode, for example. So if I click on wireframe, as you can see, it's going to change the appearance of the cube. And it's pretty much like entering the X-ray view and using the X-ray cheat in Minecraft, right? So what I can do now is also toggle X-ray on and off, right? So wireframe works well with the X-ray mode. But if I turn this off, as you can see, I only gonna see the outline of the cube, not the entirety of it. So if you want to enter the wireframe view, most of the time you want to use this. Again, the shortcut for this is press on Z and then change the different modes over here. So again, if I press on Z, I can enable the solid view over here. So if I move my mouse over here and then release it, it's gonna enter the solid view. If I press on Z again, move my mouse on the left side and release it, it's going to enter the wireframe view. Now, if I want to toggle X-ray, I can do it from here, but a shortcut for this is Alt-Z. So again, Alt-Z to turn on the X-ray, Alt-Z to turn off the X-ray, basically. Now again, I have solid view, wireframe view with X-ray, and I also have the material view. So as you can see, I clicked on material view and then Blender started lagging a little bit because it's going to load all the textures and materials you currently have inside your scene. And finally, it loaded, and as you can see, the cube is white because we don't have any textures. Whenever you don't have any textures in Blender, Blender has its own default texture, which is white, and it looks like this. Now, if I go ahead and click this one, the next one, which is called the rendered view, we're going to enter the rendered view. So Blender is going to calculate all the lights, all the reflections, all the textures, everything else you have in your scene. But right now we don't have any textures or lights, so it looks pretty dark and boring. But we're going to learn how to fix that in the later chapters as well, when we're going to go through the Minecraft animation production pipeline. So right now we can go back to the solid view, and you're going to see what these viewport shadings do later on in the course. So as you can see, my viewport shading looks weird because I entered the X-ray view in solid mode, but I don't really need to do that. So I'm going to press on Alt-Z to turn off the X-ray. And now we're back to the default setting. Now, one very, very important note when discussing viewport shading is the Cycles and Eevee render engine. So as you remember, we quickly glanced over Cycles and Eevee in previous lectures. But what we want to do is when we're working with Cycles, we want to keep the device to GPU compute, because GPU is very fast. If you have graphics card in your PC, it's very good to enable it, because if you have like an NVIDIA RTX or advanced AMD GPUs, it's going to render pretty fast. You're going to work very fast in your viewport. You're going to calculate things a lot faster, and you're going to help Blender calculate things very, very smoothly. But if you don't have a GPU, then you can keep CPU enabled. But if you have a weak PC, again, I suggest you go back to Eevee. So what we need to do is click on Device, switch this from CPU to GPU compute. But as you can see, I switched to GPU compute and it went pretty dark, which means Blender doesn't recognize it. Now, the reason Blender doesn't recognize it is I didn't tell Blender that I have a GPU. And the way I can tell Blender that I have a GPU, I can go in the top left corner, click on Edit, click on Preferences. Now go to System right here. And then I have a bunch of settings over here. Now, don't worry about the settings for now. So what we want to do is go to CUDA, Optics, HIP, or OpenAPI. If you have an NVIDIA GTX cards, you can go ahead and use CUDA. If you have NVIDIA RTX cards, like new advanced versions, for example, I have RTX 3060, you can click on Optics because it's a lot faster than CUDA. But CUDA still works well. If you have NVIDIA, I think you should use HIP. And one API, I'm not sure, I think it's for Intel CPUs, but I'm not really sure. I cannot really tell you the difference, but it has a lot of information if you click on here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click on Optics. And if you notice, when I click on Optics, it basically lit up here. So if I click on None, it went dark. If I press on Optics, it lit up over here, and Blender recognizes that I have a GPU. And some people enable CPU and GPU together, but I don't really like to do that because I found that sometimes it's pretty laggy. So I want to keep my Intel Core i5 CPU disabled. So I'm going to disable this and make sure to enable your GPU. Now, if you have CUDA, you can go ahead and enable CUDA, but I like to do optics because it's a lot faster, it's newer, and it's better. Now, what I also want to change is leave everything by default as it is. But what I want to do is go down on memory and limits under here. So if you don't see this, expand this. And then under memory on limits, we have undo steps, which means how many times you can use Control Z, how many times you can undo the last action. Now, 32 is a bit small. Sometimes I might mess up a scene and realize I have to go back. So what I can do is left click this and then drag this on the right side and then turn this all the way up, which is 256. Another way is I can type manually. For example, I want from 32 to 256 and then press on enter to confirm it. So these are mainly what I want to change. I want to enable optics and enable GPU over here. And I want to enable the undo steps. Now, Blender usually auto saves the preferences, but still, if you want to make sure you save those preferences, go ahead, click on these 3 lines over here, and then click on save preferences. But as you can see, I have the auto save enabled, and you should have this enabled as well. And then go ahead and close preferences. And now we just enabled GPU, and this is going to make our lives a lot easier when we're working with cycles. And then we can ignore the rest of the settings for now. So yeah, this is the end of the current lecture. And in the next lecture, I'm going to show you the basics of texturing, because sometimes you might need to add different textures to your characters or objects while they're working on Minecraft animations.